Mavens to Abuse. This is Busybody Podcast, and I'm so excited to have Mikala Jamison on. Big fan for a while. For long-time reader, first-time talker to you.
Right? Going off the page and onto the video screen.
Exactly. Well, introduce yourself about kind of how you started doing what you're doing, and then I have a bunch of questions around that. So.
Yeah. So I'm Mikala, and I write the Substack newsletter Body Type, and that covers what I think of body culture, which is really just anything in the realm of how people talk about, think about, have thoughts and feelings about things related to the body. So I write about exercise a lot. Getting into strength training was huge for me, and I write about that and what it continues to do for me in my life. Um, Moving away from a binge eating disorder that I had for years, I talk about that. And I write essays and responses to what other people are talking about in the realm of bodies right now. It's a very interesting and
Broad.
dynamic time
Yeah.
for body conversation. So that's what I do in my newsletter. I'm a freelance reporter, so I write health and culture stuff for other publications as well. And I have my first book coming out in about a year from today, which is kind of a blend of my own personal story, but also helping people get into exercise for the first time, with keeping in mind that it's not just for changing how your body looks, but how it helps you just become a better person and feel better in your life in lots of different ways.
That's awesome. Also, congratulations on the book. That's
Thanks.
major.
Yeah. So
I read,
I'm in the weeds with it right now, but it's been great.
and you also do these kind of speaking, like storytelling things,
Yes.
which is super cool. Can you just tell us about that?
Sure. So I sometimes, not so much right now, but I do live storytelling. So a lot of people might have heard of The Moth. That's a big live storytelling organization. But the whole idea is that people go on stage in these storytelling shows and they tell true stories from their life, usually on a theme. So sometimes the theme will just be like one word. But I did a few of those in Philadelphia, where I used to live, and then around DC. And then in 2022, I created my own show as part of the Capitol Fringe Festival here in DC, and it was called The Body Show. So the theme of those stories was anything related to people's relationship with their body. So I did that in 2022 and 2024, and I had between like 8 and 11 people in the show each time. So it wasn't just me, I was hosting it, but I had lots of different people telling lots of different stories about their relationships to their bodies. So that was great. That was like a huge creative highlight, because it wasn't just me, like clacking away at the keyboard. It was people in real life sharing their perspectives that, aren't the same as mine. So that's another little thing I like to do when I have the
That's
time.
super cool. It's like the vagina monologues, but just body.
Yeah. 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 Yes. And in the 2022 show, one of my stories was the vagina centric. So if anybody wants me to send the video of that, I can do that.
That's
So yeah,
awesome.
there are
Maybe we can
some overlap.
include a clip or
Yeah,
a
yeah,
link to it. Yeah, that's awesome.
yeah.
Um, I watched the one that you had sent out on your most recent Substack.
That was the first one I ever did. Yeah.
Yeah, that was, I think something that drew me and continues to draw me to your writing is that you hold nuance, which is like so hard. And you like really fight for it. You call out other things and like ways that people are looking at like protein or strength training. Like it's a space that we share, and it's nice to feel like, as I've been reading your writing, I'm like, oh, like I have this like exhale of like there's a peer out there, someone who's like, exercise is really good for you, and like taking care of your body is really good for you, and also can everyone calm down about this thing or this thing or this thing.
Right. That's nice to hear. Yeah. People will say that, the nuance, and I think that, I mean, that's not me. That's like what bodies are. Like, bodies are
Yes.
complicated. Bodies are
Yes.
nuanced. Like, you can have multiple messy, contradictory truths in your head at one time about your body. Day to day, minute to minute, you might have different feelings about your body. So, I think that comes through just because that's the truth of it. That's the nature of our like weird relationships to our physical self. So, I always found it tough when I would see people, whether it was a fitness influencer or an anti-diet person or whoever, just making these broad generalizations
Mhm.
about bodies. Like,
Mhm.
that's a lot of us can't relate to that content because it's it doesn't talk about the complexities. It says
Mhm.
like, this is it, this is the rules, this is what you have to do, and that doesn't work for a lot of people. So I try to pick away at that a little bit.
Mhm. Yeah. Can we I have so many places that I wanna go, even just in
I'm
there.
ready. I'm ready.
Even just in there. Um, I feel like we have to start just with your own story because that gives context, and,
Sure.
um, so in the video that you shared recently, you talked about your own weight loss, and I always put this in quotations because we also, like, we live in this time of, like, it's just kind of what I mean, is it ever not what everyone is talking about? But
Right.
I think especially with the GLPs, it's like even more of this conversation because it's super duper about weight loss. Whereas like
Mhm.
in the 80s fitness boom, it might have been about like, this kind of tight buns in a spandex thing, which is
Yeah.
like PS weight loss, but it was like a
Mhm.
little bit more like an aesthetic that was getting popular or something.
Right.
Um You talked about your own weight loss being about changing things that were in your life that were making you unhappy, and essentially kind of um the side effect of that was that your
Mhm.
body changed as
Mhm.
opposed to starting from this like change my body first. Am I reading that correctly, or kind of how did that journey start for you?
Yeah. I think that kind of gets at the multiple truths at the same time thing, because you are correct. When I was in my, like, early mid-20s, that is when I started going to a therapist and kind of, like, stumbled into talking about my
Mm,
eating disorder, which for
mm,
many years of my life, I was a binge eater. Didn't know why, didn't know it was called that. There was no, like, content talking, but, like, I had no idea what was going on. I just started talking to a therapist because I was, miserable with many things in my life, and ended up, finding that this was, like, the symptom of,
mm,
this is how I was dealing with so many things.
mm,
And I had always had issues with food my whole life, grew up with a mom that was very diet culture-y, and that was she was taught that too. Like, I say all the time, not just because I don't want her to, like, be mad at me. It's actually true. I really don't have any resentment about that, because at this point I see it as such a product of, like, how she was raised and the culture at the time. And she was not cruel about it. There were friends of mine who had mothers that were, like, very cruel about like, telling them,
mhm.
like,
Sure.
"Wow, you're really getting fat." Like, my mom never did that. I think she was worried about me. I think maybe if she didn't even know what was going on, she could kinda just tell that something was going on. So she was always trying to, like, "Let's do it together. Like, let's go for walks.
Mm,
Let's go on the Atkins diet." She didn't have the tools at the time to, like, suggest anything but whatever the latest crash diet was. But anyway, when I started getting into therapy and talking about this stuff, I had the feeling of I just wanna lose weight. Like, I just don't want to be, a fat girl at a time, especially at this time. It was even more like, you might as well be invisible. Like, I would
yeah,
have
yeah,
people scream at me on the street, and I was, like, a size 14. Like, what are we even talking about, you know?
yeah.
Um, so I really, really just, like, wanted to lose weight. That is how I walked into that space. But then over time, the things that I was changing in my life, like learning what my issues were with food, what binge eating was, why I was doing it, how not to do it, how I could deal with my emotions instead, and then getting into strength training and finding a kind of exercise I really, really liked and still love to this day. Those things were concurrent with the weight loss. Like,
Mm,
that's why they were happening. But at first, I always put it this way, like, I had to kind of walk through the door of, I just wanna lose weight, the thing that we've, for so many
mhm, mhm,
decades, that's all women wanted to do, and they weren't thinking about anything else. I started at that place, and over time, the things that made, I think, the weight loss happen in a way that felt healthy to me and that I have sustained, that they were like, that was the result of the strength training, the having a better relationship with food, the, like, dealing with my emotions, dealing with my problems. So a lot of people will talk about getting into exercise is that's not what they wanna do when they're recovering from eating disorder, because they were over-exercising or whatever
Mhm,
when they were in the
mhm,
depths of their eating disorder, right?
mhm,
For me, it was the opposite. I was so disconnected from my body when I was binge eating that getting into it through exercise, that was what was, like, really transformative.
mhm,
So, to directly answer the question, like, I think it was at first really about that, and then pretty quickly, I think probably because of the strength training element, it was so much deeper.
mhm,
Like, yeah, I lost weight and I was glad that I did. I'm not, I never shy away from that. But the things that were besides the weight loss are the things that matter, like, so much more, and I would have never thought that. I didn't even know that those things could happen from exercise and from changing my relationship to food.
mhm. Um, it it makes me I am on board with everything you're saying, and I also feel like have you had anyone, when you write about this or talk about this,
Mhm.
feel defensive because they're in a larger body and they're like, I don't wanna approach my body like it's like this because am, like, mentally unwell in some way
Yep.
or need help in some way."
Mhm.
Um,
Yeah.
do you have you spoken to that at all?
Yeah, that's a really good question, and I think about that a lot, and I think from writing the newsletter, which I love to do because it becomes a conversation, like, I love the comment section, I love, the talks I can have with other people because of
Mhm,
this,
mhm.
and a lot of times, my readers help me think about things in different ways or conversations I'm very open to, like, "Hey, if I got this wrong, like, I kinda need
Right,
to know that I got it wrong." I'll hold fast to the things that I feel like are very true and, immutable for me, but sometimes I'm like, "Oh, shit, like, I didn't really think about that, in
totally.
a certain way." So, yeah, I've had people there was one comment, I wrote something at some point about how I had gained a lot of weight at some point in some year when my binge eating and drinking, was really at its worst, and I wrote about how very soon after that, I developed health problems, like, I was, going to the doctor and high blood pressure and high cholesterol and pre-diabetic and all of these things, um, and that is tied up also with, stress and
Exactly,
issues with my mental health, and it's not just fat equals those
exactly.
problems. So they are caught up, but I wrote about how, because that's what was happening to my body, I had these health problems, and I had a commenter say, like, "Take issue with that, like, just because you being heavier is not necessarily the reason you had those issues," and granted, 100%. I also do think that it's complicated because my weight was very connected to the mental health problems that I was
Mhm,
having. Like, I was
mhm,
coping with not dealing with my mental health by essentially punishing myself with food, and that caused me to gain weight.
mhm.
So I think a lot about how, here's a good example. I trained for a powerlifting meet in like February 2020, right before the pandemic. And during that time, I gained like 15, 20 pounds because I was eating and lifting and
Yeah,
gaining muscle and gaining fat. I felt great. It was actually like it was such a stark difference from times in my life when I was like, "Oh my god, I gained a pound, the world is over," because that's what we were taught. I didn't ca I felt awesome. I was
mhm,
like, "Oh my gosh, like, I'm muscular, I'm strong, I'm not worried about this at all." That to me signaled, like, it's not gaining weight that's the issue itself or being in a bigger body. For me, when I was in my biggest body, it was the direct result of self-harming behaviors, honestly.
mhm,
So I really try to make clear, and I don't always get this right, I think, that that's a very unique situation for me. That is not the case for everybody else. And so if someone feels like the weight loss part of the things I talk about is tough for them because that's not their experience, I grant them that 100%. I'm kind of just trying to be real about like what it was for me, for better or worse. Like even if that's not, you know, the fears that I've had where it's like, oh, if I suddenly gained 30 pounds this year, is that because I'm binging? That would
mhm,
be scary for me because for me, that
mhm,
would be like
mhm,
I'm going back to something that was really, really harmful for me.
mhm.
If I gained it for some other reason, that could be a different story. So again,
Mhm.
it's so that's like the nuance piece of it. Like even in my own life, different times have meant different things in terms of what's happening to my body. I think that's the case for everybody.
That's beautifully said, and I think something that I've also tried to articulate, and this brings up this again for me, is I think in the world that we live in, we still have this very binary perspective of the human body because we don't get taught really anything about like body composition in school. And so
Totally.
basically anyone who's not a size 2 is
Mhm.
fat, but that you could be somebody who has the body to be a rugby player, you know, you could just
Mhm.
be a large, thicker, muscular person.
Mhm.
Um, and that there are so many women because their bodies don't fit this extremely small, narrow, like, you know, all the puns intended, basically,
Mhm.
um, idea of what your body's supposed to look like. They're fighting against literally just a body frame and, like,
Right.
you know, I'm not in a big body, but I'm not in a, like, skinny body,
Right.
um, and I always remember this picture that used to be in my dad's office where I'm about 10 and I'm, like, on a swing set, and I'm, like, you know, I'm holding the ropes of the swing, and you can see my little delt muscles and bicep muscles flexing, and I was like, I've always had a body that just has muscle on it and builds muscle really easily, which is also why
Mhm.
I'll never be skinny. Even at my
Mhm.
most disordered eating, I was still muscular. I never pushed myself to the point where I was really
Mhm.
eating up all of my muscle. So, like, always gonna have thick thighs because I got
Right.
big quads and hamstrings. Like, that's just, like, not, you
Same.
know? Um, and I think, like, fortunately, I got involved in, like, health and fitness early enough that I knew that, and I'm
Mhm.
not saying that, like, if my whole body was primarily fat-based, that that's bad, but at least I had a sense of, like, if the messaging that we're constantly getting is, like, being fat is bad, I knew that I wasn't fat. Now I'm gonna get into really delicate territory. But, I think what's so interesting is that when you do engage with your body, you can learn more about, like, literally what makes your body up and why, and that
Exactly.
some people literally have different kinds of bodies, including bodies that store fat more and other people store fat less, and I've had plenty of clients who had the same kind of way of, suffering that you had,
Mhm.
who have very thin bodies because
Mhm.
the undernourishment that happens when we're binging and drinking a lot,
Right.
for some people's bodies, it makes them actually really thin.
Right.
Why? We don't know, but people
Yeah.
metabolize things in different ways. Some people can eat, you know, junk food or whatever and
Mhm.
actually, like, it weirdly pass through them, probably very uncomfortably,
Right.
you know?
Yeah. Well, I mean,
Um,
if you're only eating, 1 meal a day and it's
right.
even if it's 800 calories of candy, okay, well, if you only ate 800 calories that day, like, yeah, you're probably gonna
Exactly.
be pretty undernourished and maybe very thin because of that.
Exactly, and so I
Yeah.
think, like, it's helpful, I hope, for people to recognize that there's, like, a lot of stories behind what people's bodies look like, and you never know what's going on,
Yes.
and
And,
it that's the healing process, that's somebody else's journey, and we have to be careful when we just make a decision like, "Oh, that skinny person's anorexic or something." That skinny
yeah.
person might be binging a ton. That skinny
Right.
person might have a digestive problem where they,
Right.
like, have very few foods that they can eat, and they're struggling and angry and upset about it, you know what I
Yeah,
mean? Like
exactly. I see that a lot lately too, especially with the, GLP-1 time that we're in. I get very frustrated when I see people commenting often in what I think is a really cruel way about thin bodies
Mhm,
and slinging around a lot of like, "Oh, like the, Ozempic era is here," or whatever, and describing women's like celebrity women who are really
mhm,
thin now, describing them as like skeletal or like, haunting looking, like they and it's like, "Listen, are they on a GLP-1? Yeah, maybe. Like GLP-1s are more popular, so like it's fair, if you hear hoofbeats, right? Like,
mhm,
but at the same time, you have no idea like why
yeah,
people are the way they are. And even if you do, like what's the point of
and
this?
the
I think
pressure that the
yeah,
person is under.
right. I think it just increases this like surveillance state we feel like we live in about
Mhm,
bodies. Like anything you do with your body, someone's going to, even if they're cloaking it in this like, "Oh, I'm just concerned." Well, I didn't like when people said that about me when I was fat, and I don't like it if people say it about people who are fit. Like, are
Yeah,
you concerned or are you, are you virtue signaling? Are you actually trying to snark? Like, I just feel like it's usually not totally, altruistic to talk about
totally.
someone else's unless you
Yes,
know them personally. It's very different if you're talking about, like, sitting down with a dear friend and asking some
totally.
gentle questions or whatever. But the conversation on the internet, I think, is often really it's cruel toward thin bodies, much in the same way that we've always been cruel towards fat bodies. I
Mhm.
just don't see how that like moves the needle at all.
Exactly. You're listening to Busybody Podcast, sponsored by Brooklyn Strength, my studio. Brooklyn Strength is a virtual fitness and wellness studio offering weekly drop in live virtual classes, monthly workshops, one to one private sessions with me or my teaching staff, as well as a whole host of self paced coaching courses in strength, stability, injury prevention, as well as Nourish Yourself, my course where you can really deep dive with me to create daily habits around food and movement that are sustainable and not misogynistic, fatphobic, or racist. Challenging, but we do it. If you would like to support this podcast, you can support Brooklyn Strength by signing up for our classes or supporting me via Substack with a subscription. Hope you're enjoying this show.
And I'll say real quick too, like when you were talking about just everybody's, body being different, me getting into the gym and doing strength training was such an education in that in particular because, for my whole life, I always had this idea in my head of like the correct amount to weigh. And I won't like talk about numbers or anything because I know it's sensitive. But if I have this idea in my head, like, okay, that's the right number, like that's the right number for a woman to weigh. That's me when I'm skinny and everything will be great. When I started strength training, even when I got to my most lean, so had relatively lower body fat versus how much muscle I had, the number on the scale at that time was way more than that
Yeah,
skinny. You know, like I learned that like I had to get into a fitness space which, like, yes, caused my body to change, caused me to lose body fat, to learn that I did not want to be as skinny as I always thought I
yeah.
wanted to be. So that was really positive for me. So some people, I think, have a lot of totally justifiable fears about the toxicity of the fitness space, and they're worried that it's just gonna, further entrench them in self-harming body stuff, and it certainly can do that. I work in the fitness space. I'll be the first to tell you that the potential is there, but it also could teach you that you don't just want to strive
Mhm.
for a thigh gap or whatever the hell, you know
Mhm.
what I mean?
Mhm.
It's
I
again,
think
it's
it
so
can
person to person. It's really
yeah,
different for everyone.
yeah. And I think it can help people recontextualize their body.
Totally.
And I think any space where you're really dealing with the body in an intensive way can potentially shift in both directions. I
Mhm,
come from a dance background, and the
mm,
last 2 weeks I was taking a, dance workshop, and there I am with a bunch of people, and I think I've been trying to write about this actually. I think when people think dancer, they immediately have this idea because of all the, like, 90s and early 2000s, like, dance movies of, like,
right.
very thin white women, basically.
Yeah. Yeah.
And then it's, like, really catty. It's, like, all fame, it's all we're
Mhm,
all trying
mhm,
to drag each other down. For sure that exists. There are so many different dance worlds. There's very competitive dance worlds and blah, 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 but on the whole, just like any community, like, it's a community also,
right.
and there were so many different bodies in the room,
Mhm,
all different kinds of bodies, all different ages bodies, and a place that I found a lot of healing with my body is when I was training in dance the most. Um, you're often, not all dance classes use mirrors for a whole variety of reasons, but
mhm,
you're often in front of a mirror.
right.
And every day there you are, 9 a.m.
Mhm,
ballet class, and you're in front of a mirror, and you're using the mirror particularly in ballet because ballet is very structural. And so you really
mhm,
are trying to be like, is my elbow up or is it down? It's like, really is that exact. So you really do need to look.
right.
And I just at some point was like, well, either I'm gonna stare at myself in the mirror and every day hate on myself, or I'm gonna be like, hi, body, and also thank you, body, for giving me the opportunity to do this thing that I love,
Mhm.
regardless of how I feel about you in every single moment of my day.
Right.
And like over time, that was really healing and transformative. And I think that a lot of the space, like when I'm in the dance world, a lot of people are actually there,
Mhm.
that they're just like, I'm living and working in this body and it's like literally
Mhm.
my instrument. And so,
Right.
how can you don't hate your violin while you're playing it? That doesn't make any sense and it's not going to
Yeah.
work.
That's a great comparison. I'll remember that. Yeah, like, yeah, you're using it as a tool in that context, to do the art that you're doing or to complete the workout, whatever the case may be. I think that that can really help, like, getting into an exercise space. This is kind of like the crux of so much I'm writing right now. It really can help you
Yeah.
and, like, get away from some of that toxicity. And I think that's really hard for people to understand, and I get why it is. I don't blame them at all for feeling this way. When you are only thinking of exercise as like the no pain, no gain,
Hmm.
be as thin as possible, elliptical 2 hours a day, 6 almonds, whatever. You can't imagine
Why do
that
we all know
space.
that six
I know
almonds?
right.
Where did
It's
it come from?
we all really are living
I'm
the
like,
same
Shape
lives.
Magazine, 1997. Like, I
I
feel
know.
like that's where.
Yeah, truly. So, yeah, like, if that's how I used to I didn't
Yeah.
think of the gym as anything but that until, I at one point, I became a group fitness instructor, and I taught indoor cycling, spinning. And the first spinning class I went to in Philly, the instructor was a very large woman, like a
Mhm.
plus-sized fat woman, and she could have been on that bike 8 hours a day. Like,
Mhm.
she was so powerful and incredible and awesome, and that should not be surprising. It's not surprising to me anymore. Like, of course, anyone in any body can do that, but that's not what I was taught. That's not what I ever
Right.
saw. When did we in 2006 or whatever, when did I ever see any media of a fitness instructor who wasn't a
Exactly.
thin person, right? So, like, I mean, that's why seeing people in different bodies doing things is so helpful. And that is why I kind of sometimes I'm like, "Look, if you get into the right gym, like a
Exactly.
gym that's not just," there's
Probably
some gyms
not
that
Equinox, basically.
yeah, but if you get into the right gym, you will see so many different types, especially now, more people are working out than ever
Mhm.
before. When I became an instructor and would be in the gym, whether I was teaching class or not, there were people that were, like, almost my grandparents' age. There were
Mhm.
people of
Mhm.
every different body, people that were, like, super serious bodybuilders and people that were like, "I'm just here to, like, get my steps in on the treadmill." It really opened my eyes to everybody's there for different reasons. Everybody can be here, and really nobody cares, like, what you're doing in the gym. Like,
Yeah.
it really took time to not be freaked out thinking everyone was, like, looking at me all the time. That's
That
not what's happening.
that is so deeply healing, and you do have to be really, um you do have to be really brave, to just kind of
Yeah.
stick with it for a bit because that's like
Yeah.
a healing process. I think people want to believe that like the first day they step in, they're going to be like,
Mhm.
"Oh, it turns out it is an inclusive space. Yay, I feel great. I'm coming back tomorrow." But it
Yeah.
takes you a while to suss that out because like the first
Mhm.
time you go in, you're like, "Oh, there's like big muscle guys over there. They probably think
Right.
I'm terrible." Well, often those big muscle guys are like hilarious and they're very much involved in their own thing and are often like the sweetest guys in the gym who will like help
Totally.
you load, your weights or whatever.
Yeah.
Um, and I grew up going to a really just like bare bones gym back kind of when this is also something people don't realize. Like the 90s was kind of the first time that women had like full access to gyms with weight rooms. It's
Mhm.
really new. Gyms were really just for men until
Mhm.
like the 80s bodybuilding boom and
Right.
literally female bodybuilders like breaking those walls. So
Mhm.
that when I was in high school, me and my friend used to go to a local gym and we would lift weights. And at that time, there would be like maybe one other woman in the free weight room.
Yeah.
Now it's like 50-50,
Oh,
if not mostly women. I mean, it's just amazing how much that's
it's
changed.
so my husband and I joined a new gym in my area, and it skews pretty young. Sometimes I feel like grandma and grandpa of the gym, but keeps me young. Um, but, like, these 20-year-old
Ah,
women, like, just beasts in that
beast.
space, and my heart, like, explodes out of my chest.
Yeah.
I'm like, "This when I was 20, what are we I can't
Oh
believe
my
it."
god, I still remember last summer I was lifting weights at a gym. There was some she's probably in college because it's a college town where I live in the summer. She was, like, deadlifting so much fucking weight. I
It's
was,
so
like,
cool.
across the room, like, clapping for her.
I know. Well, my husband texted me when he was at the gym by himself, and he goes and my husband's a big muscular dude, has been lifting for 20 years. He texts me and he's like, "I have never in my life, in all the gyms he's been in," he says, "I have never seen like, close to an even split of men and women
Yeah,
lifting weights in a gym." Like, it is so cool. And so if someone's main concern is, "Oh, I'm gonna be the only woman there,"
yeah,
please let me, like, just throw that out the window. It's almost certainly not gonna be true anymore.
yeah.
There's other reasons it might be scary, but, like, it's not, it's not 2002 anymore or even
And
2010. Like
and I also I do a virtual running club as part of my offerings, and I have a co-host who's a running coach, and I do, like, the rehab, prehab stuff,
Mhm,
and I also kind of do it with the participants. Um, and that is a big theme that comes up. People are like, we it's very, very beginner friendly. So people are
mhm,
like, I've never run before. I'm so nervous. And because running is public, we just talked about this in our last coaching call. People were like, I literally feel really self-conscious when I'm out there. I'm
mhm.
slow. I have a
Yeah.
bigger body. Like people are looking at me or whatever. And I always tell people, I'm like, I know this is like the last thing on your radar, but sign up for a 5K because
Mm,
you will see that there are so many people and so many bodies out running, and I
mhm,
promise you that someone in an even bigger body or someone who's, like, 20 years older than you is gonna
mhm.
just smoke past you, and you're gonna be like, oh,
Yeah.
because everyone always says, "Oh, I'm slow because I'm in a bigger body," and I'm like, "Not true, totally
Mm,
100% not true." And similar to your spin instructor experience, the Brooklyn Half that I just did,
mm,
there was a woman ahead of me who was super short. I'm almost 5'7". She was like maybe 5 feet tall, maybe it's super short, really round, big fat body basically.
mhm.
Um, the most solid pace. Every
Wow.
time I lost my was like, "Ugh, what's happening? This is hard." I was like, "Where is she? Where is she?"
Yeah.
And she had this, like, bright green bag on, so I could always find her
Yeah.
in the crowd, and there was she. She just, like, up the hill, same pace, down the
I
hill,
love
same.
that.
I was like, "Oh my god, she's so fucking strong." And I used her for, like at some point, we lost each other, I don't know where. I'm not even gonna make the assumption that I passed her. Probably when I, like, went off to the water station, she, like, disappeared into the crowd.
She
I
found the
wanted to
crowd
see
again.
Yeah, exactly. I wanted to see her at the end to thank her for just being like, you,
Oh,
because often in running, someone is your rabbit, it's called, where
yeah.
you just try and, like, hold on to them, and so
Mhm.
I used her as my rabbit for, like, 8 miles out of the 13, of just,
That's
like,
great.
wherever she was, I was like, "As long as I'm, like, 6 feet from her, I'm doing good."
Right.
Um, yeah, it
What if she the whole time was thinking, "Everybody thinks I'm slow, everybody
yeah,
thinks I suck, I'm really bad."
exactly,
Meanwhile, she has no idea that you are latching on to her as, like, your guide in this
exactly.
experience. Yeah, you really never know,
You
and
never know. And the opposite of that, I was visiting San Francisco and I was training for a half at the same time, and it was the first time I'd done a half, and I was really nervous. I was like, it was poorly timed trip and all this stuff, and I had to do one of my first long runs, so I found a local running group that was doing runs
Mhm.
and joined up with them, and I had to do 8 miles with them. I was all nervous. I showed up. They were a huge group. Oh my god, San Francisco's running community. There was like 1,000 people on Saturday. I was like, "Holy
Wow.
crap." And very well organized, and they had different pace markers, like people holding signs, so you could go with your pace. And there
Mhm.
was a very, very, very thin woman in my pace group, and I saw her, I didn't even know she was in my pace group. I saw her and all my stuff triggered,
Mm,
and I was
mhm.
like, "Oh my god, the skinny fast runner girl," and, like, what am I doing? I was so insecure already because it was, like, my first really long run. I was nervous about it. I was jet lagged. I was like, "This is a terrible idea. Why have I done this to myself?" She ended up being in my pace group and literally started talking to me while we were running and was just,
Aw.
like, so nice and, like,
Yeah.
chatty chat the whole time, clearly like no judgment about me and my abilities and was just like, do do. She was like, oh, I'm training for this marathon that's happening over here, and blah, blah, blah. We had like the nice conversation. And, that's what people don't realize. We
Right.
have this really binary culture that we live in, and we have all this messaging. But when it
Mhm.
comes to the more granular level, and you actually just talk to people and you put yourself out
Yeah,
there.
you just don't know what you're gonna experience in the
Yeah.
spaces until you get into it, and when people usually women talk to me about their fears about getting into the gym, which again, I totally understand, um, and one of them being like, "I'm afraid I'm gonna look dumb, I'm afraid I'm gonna make a fool of myself, I'm not gonna fit in the space, people are gonna be looking at me." I said earlier, like, "No, nobody's looking at you," which I think actually I'll amend is mostly true,
Yeah.
but the thing is, like, somebody might be, like, looking at what there are times when I've looked at people in the gym either because I was impressed as hell, I
Mhm.
was like, "How do I get those shoulders?" or whatever, or I or they were, like, doing something wrong, and I was, like, worried they were gonna hurt themselves.
Mhm.
Like,
Yeah.
sometimes that happens, sometimes somebody might be looking at you judgmentally or whatever. I'm not gonna say that that won't happen because that's just, like, what it
That's
is
human
to be
nature.
that's
We
to be in
all
the world as a person,
Yeah.
but what I try to emphasize is, like, at a certain point, you won't care. Like,
Mhm.
the gym can be somewhere or any exercise, space can be somewhere where you build resilience, you build sort of your, like, don't give any fucks capabilities. You feel comfortable there, so you don't really worry about what other people are doing there. Like, I things can kind of more easily roll off your back once you establish yourself as belonging in the space. So even if somebody's, like, looking at me weird, I don't even notice it anymore. I don't like and if you're going there more, you're gonna be less likely to, like, do something wrong anyway. So, it's
Yeah.
really just that initial period. It's like anything else. Once you get over the hump of, like, the weird beginner, scary, I don't know what I'm doing part of it, I'm telling you, getting over that hump, you're good, and it doesn't take that long. It
It
could take a
doesn't take
couple
that long.
weeks,
Yeah.
and then you finally feel better, and you're not worried about it anymore.
I think what you're talking about too is kind of developing a real embodied sense of body confidence, which can
Mhm.
only happen when you engage with your body. And
Yep.
that could even start at home, doing some kind
Mhm.
of routine at home until you feel more confident to like go to a gym and pick up weights and not literally worry that you're fumbling and things like
Right.
that. Which I totally remember doing when I was like early on in weights and just
Mhm.
struggling, like, literally just struggling to pick up a plate and then be like, "Oh, because that's the 45-pound weight, and I meant to pick up the 25," and, like,
Yeah, yeah.
um, and just get you there is a comfort level that has to come around equipment or
Mhm.
literally running, like, comfort level of, like, "Oops, turns out this is not the sports bra that I needed for this," or,
Yeah, right.
whatever, like, there's this learning curve,
Mhm.
and I think, like, just being gentle with ourselves, it's something I talk about a lot in my teaching. As adults, we so rarely are in circumstances of learning. It
Yeah.
happens all the time when we're children, but there's
Mhm.
just, like, this point eventually where we really self-organize into spaces where we're not having to learn new skills
Mhm.
because
Mhm.
it's hard, and as adults, we get shamed for not knowing how to do something, and, like,
Right.
sure, maybe you learned how to use a new app or whatever, but it's been a long time since you learned how to drive or something that
Right.
really gave you direct feedback. "Oop, you, like,
Mhm.
slammed the
Did
brakes
it
on too
wrong.
hard."
Right.
Literally wrong?
And I think learning how to do something new with our bodies is especially fraught because we're in our bodies doing things every day, so if you've already been in your body for several decades, it feels like, "Well, I should know how to do everything already.
Exactly.
Why is it I have to learn how to, like, move my limbs differently?" It's so vulnerable because
Totally.
it really does make you feel like you're like a child again.
Mhm.
I have to learning how to do a back squat, let's say. I remember feeling so, like, kind of sheepish about, like, how why do I not know how to, like, move my hips back and then, like, lower down it's like you feel like you
Yeah,
should
yeah,
know
yeah,
it, so
totally.
then you feel bashful about, like, "I can't believe I don't know this." But you can remove some of that, shame and bashfulness, I guess, if you just think about, like, well, if you don't intentionally do this stuff all the time, why would you know it? Like,
Exactly.
you don't
Something I
know how to
talk
do
about
anything until you do it all the time.
my one of my favorite things to teach is a plank because I'm like,
Mhm.
literally, when was the last time someone
Right.
actually taught you how to do that? People just tell you
Right.
to get into it, But, like,
Yep.
did anyone ever break that down? Did anyone ever
Mhm.
just, like, describe what we're trying to do,
Right.
why it's hard, how to find it, like,
Mhm.
how to deal with the fact that it's, like, very hard? It's one of the few exercises that happen, consistently in, like, fitness classes that's actually just a static hold, right?
Right.
Like, we don't do wall squats regularly where we just
Mhm.
stand there trembling, but for
Right.
some reason, planks appear, whereas everything else
Mhm.
has the release of, like, letting the weight down.
Yeah.
So I love to teach it to people and just bring our attention to the fact that, like, yeah, if you go to your random Orange Theory class and they
Mhm.
make you do a zillion push-ups or planks and you literally have never been taught how to do that, of course
Mhm.
it's gonna feel like a nightmare. Of course it's
Huge.
gonna feel like you're
Yeah.
straining yourself. You might be straining yourself. Like,
Right.
there's a lot of factors in there, and this
Mhm.
assumption that you should just know how to do this
Yep.
is so strange, actually.
There's a really good, article that was in The Atlantic a couple years ago by the writer Amanda Mull that was essentially the thesis was, there really are no true beginner, like,
Mhm,
workout classes at
mhm.
most gyms, right? Like, even if it says it's for all levels, even if it's like, beginner Barry's boot camp or whatever, I'm just throwing
Right.
things out there. It's really not a true beginner class if someone walks into that class and is told, "Okay, do a plank or do a
Right.
squat," and they have literally never
Yeah.
intentionally done a squat before. That is, and I say this as a group fitness instructor, that is the trouble with group fitness in general, is like there's usually only one instructor to what, 30 participants? Nobody can take you through these things and really teach them to you unless it's like what you're doing very intentionally, like, we are
Yeah.
breaking this down.
Yeah.
So you can kind of be taught into some, like, bad habits in
For
that way.
sure.
I don't
Because
wanna
people are
discourage
always
anyone.
catching
Yeah.
up. Like, that's
Right.
they're always like, ugh, trying to keep up with the class, or they
Right.
feel ashamed to literally. I mean, I do teach true beginner because I
Mhm.
literally say, "You can interrupt me. Like, I'm not gonna leave you
Mm,
behind." And that
good.
is the intention of this space, which means if the person next to you feels
Mhm.
really confident doing that, great, they can keep doing it on their own, and I'm
Mhm.
gonna break it down for you because, like, I want us all to be on the same page, and
Yeah.
it just seems ridiculous to not have that happen.
Mhm.
Um, can you speak a little bit about, like, this is where it gets into the tricky spot. Like,
Mhm.
once you've developed this body confidence, hopefully you're engaging with your body and you're in the world of, like, you're moving in some way. So you're essentially in some form of the fitness world.
Mhm.
Now comes all the other voices that you should be lifting more, or you should
Mhm.
be, like, changing your protein, or you should be, like, running faster. This is something that comes up in our run club all the time. Like, if you're really coming from a place where you're trying to heal and re-engage with your body or engage with your body for the first time and be, like, in your body,
Mhm.
now you're doing that, and we live in such a, like, everything has to constantly go upwards society. Like, that's the next level, and how do you start to navigate that?
Yeah, it's a great question. What I go back to a lot is this idea of trying to interrogate your own values
Mhm,
around exercise, your body, meaning, like, what do you actually want to do? And what do you care about? What might you have to sacrifice to do those things?
mhm,
What are you unwilling to sacrifice? There's so many questions you can ask yourself, but like when you said the trajectory should always be up, 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 that just depends on what you wanna do. Like, if you want, like, okay, I'll take the powerlifting meet as an example. I wanted to compete. The point of a powerlifting meet is to lift as heavy as you can across 3 exercises: the squat, the bench press, and the deadlift. So, I was training to go up, 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 get stronger, stronger, stronger. Outside of that context, that might not be what I wanna do. Like, right now, I'm not interested in trying to deadlift as much as I can because that's not where my values are right now. I don't wanna do the things I'd have to do that. I don't wanna give up the things I'd have to do that, et cetera, et cetera. So, I think once you get into the fitness space and you start to hear all of the, like, eat more protein, lift more weights, do more reps, do this kind of training, that kind of training, it's so much noise. I think you really have to. You kind of have a responsibility to yourself, I might argue. Like, sit down and think, what are my goals right now? That could be for the next 8 weeks, that could be for the rest of the year, that could be just for tomorrow, like, whatever amount of time. What do you wanna do? Because you might find that that doesn't require you to eat 150 grams of protein today. That doesn't require you to, add more mileage or add more weights or whatever. This idea that we should always be, lifting to failure or pushing ourselves or eating more protein or whatever. If you have a specific goal, yeah, you might have to increase a lot of the things that you're doing. But if that's not your goal, then you don't have to worry about it. You have to figure out what it is that you want, and sometimes that's tough. Like, you might not know, and the answer could just be, "I'm just gonna keep what I'm doing for 3 months or whatever, and then reevaluate."
Mhm,
Like,
mhm.
a shameless plug, I guess, but the title of my book is The Forever Project because the whole idea is your relationship to your body and finding this sense of embodiment or however you deal with exercise. That is something that will be forever, in my opinion. You will always have to reevaluate it, reinterrogate it, think about it in a different context. Like, you're aging, you had a kid, you got an injury, your body changed, you lost weight, you gained weight, like whatever is happening. You kind of have to come back to that place of, okay, what do I want to do right now? What really matters to me? And what are those values? So I think that that would be my advice for anybody that's kind of newly in the fitness space and maybe they're starting to feel like, okay, I have confidence now, but is it time to level up? Do I now really need to care about XYZ? Maybe, but maybe not. Like, only you can answer that. And if you're in a gym that's throwing a lot of directives at you, like, okay, you've been working out here for a month, it's time to like build an entirely new progressive overload plan to get you deadlifting 300 pounds or whatever. If that's not what you want to do, then that's not the space you need to be in. Like, it's not unfortunate, it just means there's more responsibility that at a certain point you have to go deep into figuring some of this stuff out for yourself. And once you do, it feels really good because then you don't feel like you're just being like dragged around by whatever your instructor or influencers are telling you.
Yeah, that's brilliant because I think we live in a world that just really asks us to outsource everything from
Hmm.
like getting your groceries delivered to having an app tell you that you have to walk more steps.
Right.
And if you are a real beginner and you have a lot of insecurity around your body, almost a body beginner, like
Hmm.
sometimes I would say that people would come to my studio and it was like they picked their body up from the body factory like 1 hour before coming. And they
Yeah.
were really just like, I don't know how my legs work, actually, turns out,
Hmm.
now that I'm in your class, you know?
Yeah. That
And
is such a true feeling.
yeah, and I would be like, "It's okay, apparently you're really new to this body. We're gonna learn how it works,
Hmm.
and how your body works, which is different than mine and the person next to you and all this stuff." Um, which also says that be really mindful of the guides that you have, because I
Hmm.
think people are really extremely willing to just, like, completely give over control to someone. "Oh, I hired a trainer and they told me that I have to eat more protein and now we're upping my weights and all this stuff," and be like, Okay, is that what you want?"
Hmm.
Like, they seem to have a goal for you. Is it your goal? And like, unfortunately, there are a lot of bad teachers and trainers, and like, my God,
Hmm.
there's a zillion terrible yoga teachers out there, like, you have to, um, for instance, I don't teach abdominal work that curls to
Hmm.
my elderly clients, and not often to my clients that spend a lot of times at a desk. Because why would I recreate a shape that's already happening so much?
Hmm.
There's 1,000 ways to work your core and your
Yeah.
abdominals with the spine straight or even
Yeah.
standing.
Hmm.
And sometimes people are like, "Whoa," and I'm just
Yeah.
like, "I'm looking at you as a person, like,
Right.
we don't need to just sit here and go like this for, like, a bunch of time when you're 75 and you're already like that. Why would we do
Yeah.
that? That literally makes no
Yeah, that's
sense."
very smart. But once you start to really, like, look at this stuff, it makes more sense than we give it
Exactly,
credit for
exactly.
sometimes. Like, I was just talking to somebody about bench pressing actually, and, even though I trained it when I was in the powerlifting meet, that really is not, like, applicable to daily life for most of us,
Mhm,
that
mhm.
movement. Like, when are you laying on your back and, like, pressing up? Like, the only example I've ever heard somebody respond is they said, when I'm laying on the floor with my kid and, like,
It
throwing
totally.
her up into the
Yeah,
air, okay, I'll give you that one. But it is definitely less, translatable to daily life than a squat or a deadlift is.
totally.
If you're picking
I'm
up a
always like,
box
if
off the
you
floor,
happen to be on the floor when your refrigerator tips over on you,
yeah, then
super
great.
useful.
And
Oh!
you can bench 325. You're in a great position, yeah. But that yeah, like, maybe your goal then, becomes, "Okay, I wanna work on movements that translate into activities of daily
Mhm,
life." Like, I just wanna learn how to, be able to pick up, like, the writer Casey Johnston, who wrote the book of physical education. One of her great posts was learning how to squat and lift and deadlift to pick up the cat litter off
mhm,
the
mhm,
ground when it got delivered to her house, like the big 40-pound bag of cat litter.
mhm.
She used to have to, like, drag it, through
Totally.
the streets or whatever into her apartment, and now she knows how to lift it without
Yeah,
hurting herself.
because
That's a
also,
huge life skill.
if people don't know, like, that kind of weight, sand weight, soft,
Mhm.
is literally one of the most challenging things to
Right.
lift up, and
It's an
that's
odd object, it's shifting. Yeah, it's weird.
yeah, and it's also very much like lifting a sleeping child. It's,
Yeah.
like, head weight, tail weight,
Right,
they're basically, like, dead weight, or lifting
right.
your pet. I have a 65-pound pit bull who has he looks like a gym bro who only does shoulders. His back end is really small.
You're like, "You've got some imbalances. We're
Yeah,
gonna need to work
I
on this."
literally always joke with him. I'm like, "Dude, when's leg day with you?" But yeah, he needs help getting lifted into the car, and
Mhm.
I have to squat and lift him up, because he's all, he always wriggles. He, like, doesn't
Right.
understand I'm helping him. It's like, oh,
And once you start exercising and, like, seeing that stuff that you can do now, I mean,
that's
look,
the
I'm
changer.
never gonna pretend I don't like the moments that I look in the mirror and go like, "Ooh, okay, the muscles, whatever."
Yeah.
But what I like way more is when somebody's like, "Hey, let Mikala lift that box, she's really strong." Like,
Mhm.
when
Totally.
when I can just do stuff in my life because I have the physical capability, that's the shit that's gonna sustain hopefully longer than, like, my delts look good or
I
whatever.
love impressing older ladies who are
Oh,
really from a time when women were supposed to be, like,
yeah,
so weak, like, truly
yeah,
from corset time,
right.
like they, uh, wearing so much restrictive body stuff and
Mhm.
and 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 developing no muscle, and anytime an
Yeah.
old lady is like, "Oh, you're so strong."
How can you do it?
I always just wanna be like, "That's right."
Right? And sometimes it's like 1 gallon of milk and
Totally.
you're like, "Babe, you don't even
I'm
know
like,
what
"I could
I could
juggle
do."
this."
It is, it's awesome. I mean, I have picked up things in front of men that, like, their eyes popped out of their head because
Totally.
they just didn't expect it, and I mean, that's just, like, a fun little bonus when you can kinda, like, flex on them a little bit.
And to kind of bring it back to our earlier point, if you come from a place with a lot of body insecurity, it's like the thing I'm always trying to inspire people to, once you have those experiences, so much of that crap just falls away. It
Yeah.
really, really does. And it gets a lot easier to deal with the messages or the
Mhm,
grandma who makes a comment about your body or whatever, because you start to see your body from this multifaceted place. And
mhm,
you can be like, yeah, I have whatever soft parts, or you're in a bigger body, or whatever thing that you've been told to be feeling ashamed about, but
mhm.
then you also are getting this reward system essentially building of being like, "Whoa, I'm so much more capable physically." Like,
Exactly.
I wouldn't when you lift weights, you often, well, if you're a more muscular person like I am, if you lift weights, you do get bigger. Like, literally, if
Mhm.
I really concentrate on lifting weights, I literally will, my shirts don't fit. Some of my shirts don't fit,
Mhm.
And I'm like, but I would never give up this feeling of being strong, to just
Mhm.
be like, I'll buy to be in a smaller, literally smaller size. It
Mhm.
feels so amazing to feel strong. And if you've never felt that in your
Mhm.
body, like that just will change your, like, neurons in your brain. And it gives you an entirely different place to experience the world from. And then when you're out in the world, if you feel, "Oh, someone's looking at me," you
Mhm.
also have this, like, true inner confidence of like, "Right, but also I know I can, like, lift that couch up to my friend's apartment, and it
Right.
was, like, not hard at all, and that's so cool that I can do that."
Exactly.
Thanks for listening to the first part of my conversation with Mikala Jamison. Stay tuned for the next episode and the rest of our conversation. Make sure you share, subscribe, and leave us a review if you're loving this podcast. Thanks so much. I'm Cadence Debuse. That was Busybody Podcast. I'm the founder and owner of Brooklyn Strength Studios. You can find me on Instagram at Brooklyn Strength. You can find out more about my offerings on my website, brooklynstrength.com. I hope you'll subscribe to my Substack after class. All is in the show notes. Please rate, review, and subscribe. Please share with your friends so that more people listen to this podcast. I love these conversations, and I hope more people can hear them. My music is by Rob Byrne, performed by the Wild Yaks. My podcast is produced by Brad at Train Sound Studios, and my illustrations are by Jackie Mendez and Azul Trejo, and edited by myself. Thank you so much.